it's a film where everyone kind of doesn't or can't say really what they're feeling, and sometimes they're very actively masking their true feelings. The way I kind of think about it is he's actually the one that changes the least, but it's kind of our perception of him that changes. Got this calm, kind of unfazed, very medical almost view of the world, of like kind of the natural, almost like the natural order of things. And when I think about it, it's kind of a film about first impressions and how those impressions change, and also kind of talking about Jane, how satisfying it is in films and also, I guess, in life when you kind of jump to a conclusion or you build a picture of someone based on some tiny bits of information, and then turns out you were either partly wrong or completely wrong. It's actually really satisfying, like when even you 10 minutes into the journey, you start talking to the Uber driver and turns out he used to be an airline pilot or something, and you're like, oh, that's so satisfying to learn. In films, I think that's also satisfying, but there's got to be enough information there that you don't feel just kind of completely tricked, or you haven't been completely misled, but you yourself have jumped to conclusions based on what you've seen. And then Phil's character, I think, is also a really interesting one, because we jump to those conclusions and then we slowly learn more about him and start to kind of, that empathy for him starts to build. But it was important that we were kind of so close, I guess, with him that the same kind of things he misses as to what Peter's up to, we also miss as a viewer, to kind of feel that end moment. They don't really touch, but those macro shots of the hands where you see Phil touching the rope. Peter comes in, there's a macro shot of a cigarette being rolled, and it's like, should feel, even though they don't touch, almost to shoot it in the way as if it would be a sex scene or a love scene, where the hands are really like sensual, and these really tight shots of the end of where you really emphasize the kind of gaze between each other and the power kind of, it's like magnets that are kind of pushing, but they're like trying to come close. And the sexual tension between them had to be so palpable that the same thing's happening to you as a viewer as happening to Phil, like that to be strong enough and to feel that electricity between them, that what's actually happening, your mind's not going there. Because if you watch it a second time, you really see Peter, what you read as kind of like, desire, or like his thoughts about Phil, like in a romantic interest, is actually really him watching like what his hands are doing, and is he like, is he doing what I'm hoping he's doing, and almost like keeping him talking and like keeping it kind of going is very deceptive, but that tension needed to be there for you to not be thinking about what Peter was up to. The Handheld with Phil really like unlocked something for a viewer, like felt right, and that the idea of kind of someone who's very cold and prickly, kind of almost like letting the camera come close to them and really feeling the camera more, was like gave something extra, kind of intangible but like emotional goodness, and then also for what it would allow her and Benedict to do, which is kind of doing, I guess, like even like rolling resets and not having so much people around, so she could say like, oh, on the next take, Ari, can you go lower, or let's do this on the next take, or just kind of leave Benedict and I to our own, rather than kind of having to bring in someone to change something, and there's 10 minutes of losing the moment, losing the kind of atmosphere, and then having to like re-find it and marks and all that stuff. So what we ended up doing was having a lot more handheld in the interior And Jane, again, has this amazing, when she feels things getting too serious, she'll kind of like find a reason to like be playful or actually one of the first things she said to me was like kind of silliness is like she really, not just she loves it, but it's like really necessary for her creative to be like kind of ridiculousness and silliness is like really essential for her brain to be creative. That the feeling that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
She I remember her saying someone telling me that she said this once that filmmaking's like just something to do between breakfast and lunch and dinner. You're like, why do you make films? We're like, well, I've got to do something, like, just like something to do, kind of fills the time.